Merry me, Annie here, catching up on the Pagan YouTube challenge with the conversation, what do we think of initiation? I've actually spent time with this the whole past week, which delayed my even recording a video because I wasn't sure where I wanted my video to go when it came to this conversation. If you follow me here on YouTube or you know me from elsewhere, I have experienced powerful traditional initiation into my first coven. It was life-saving. It was life-changing. But the thing is, I don't feel called to go to that place with you. It's very personal. It was, I guess the most simply put, the most powerful experience of my 62 years. The most powerful experience. At that moment, 1973 or 4. You lose track of the years when you get to be this old. When I look back on it, I try and capture that bite, the power of what it was. It was knowing, understanding that I have then, in that moment, and in any moment of my life, the possibility to choose what I leave behind, what I take forward, and what I'll make of myself, and what I'll make of myself in relationship to loved ones and the wider community. The power of truly understanding my responsibility for my own existence is kind of what it comes down to. It was understanding the most powerful aspects of love. Self-love, the love I felt for my initiators and my coven, the love I felt that came from them to me, the love that I felt with my allies, and of course with my gods. It was touching on the mystery, the absolute possibility of love. Initiation to me was, of course, that very first initiation of a young, now I look at her, a naive young woman, exactly what I should have been in that time and place. It was also the initiation that came later in my relationship with that traditional group, where the trust that I had shown in my initiators, when they brought me into this possibility of who I might be, became them demonstrating equal trust in me. And it became an understanding going forward, and that's really what I wanted to focus this on. What did that mean to me? In the length of my life since, I've said it's the single most powerful experience of my entire life. It was the power of understanding. I had responsibility for and complete ability to control my life, to make decisions, to take actions, to choose what I aligned to carefully, whether it was energy or allies or deities, whether it was lovers or other people in community. Deciding where I would be individual, unique, and separate, and where I would give over to the experience of being one with. The moments to revisit that throughout the length of my life have been countless, countless. Moments when I decided who I was or what I was willing to be open and vulnerable to. The moments that I realized that something else or someone else was opening their being to me, and what a gift it was when someone brought that to me. It might be a partnership, or it might be a friendship. It could have been the relationship I may have had with those I initiated in time. Openness and trust and vulnerability when it's offered and when it's given, when it's received. Those moments repeated themselves countless times to this very moment when I think of the blessings of love in my life and what it brought me and what it brought out of me back into the world, into others. Initiation didn't end with that first initiation or the second one. That was part of a procession through the learning channels of that first coven as I matured within it. It didn't end with that. That was just an initiation, one of so many in my life. Traumatic, joyful, but whatever, coming from a place of fire that I entered and came out the other side, choosing to be transformed. No accidental transformation here. Choosing to be transformed. Initiation. The process was led to standing at the edge of that first circle and being challenged as to whether I was going to enter. And the challenge including my understanding what I was going to leave behind that would never again be a part of me. Oh, we could say that's a matter of maturation, emotional and spiritual maturity. But we could also say that it is truly an evolution, a transforming, a becoming. I want to say maybe the next version of who we are, or stepping into the possibility of who we're becoming. Let's put it that way. Any given moment. Yes, it was that in that moment. But how many times did that moment reoccur? How many times even before that first light bulb understanding of what initiation meant to me, and in the act of preparing for it and in the actual evening of its occurrence, there have been opportunities before that for me to explore that same place. But oh, the blessing in those times and in that place to be exploring that with allies who loved me so completely and totally unlike any love I'd ever experienced before. And I am not just speaking of the circle that surrounded me and nurtured me and brought me in, the elders in that circle who initiated me, but I am talking also about the allies and the deities I were coming to align with. My initiation within that circle opened me up to, outside of, my pagan path, the opportunities for the same kind of thing in the wider world. The courage it takes to be vulnerable, the courage it takes to acknowledge one's responsibility for oneself. Courage, because it takes courage to love unconditionally. And the older I got, the more I came to understand it takes a lot of courage to let yourself be loved unconditionally. Throughout the length of my life, the possibilities for transformation, which come from the cutting edge, the tip of the blade of honesty in relationship to ourselves, and ourselves in relationship to everything that is not ourselves, everything that's outside us, everyone, every God, every energy, every possibility outside of us. The cutting edge, the point of the blade, that it's all about choice. All about choice. The only time I've been through formal initiations were at my first and second degrees with that first coven. I have been obviously involved in others' initiations in my decade with that, having come to be its priestess. And then as we hived off, high priestess, to sister covens. The later covens that I was part of did a dedication. Not something as intense, or maybe perhaps just not something called the same thing as that had been called. I've been involved with dedications that were as intense, whether a person was dedicating to a particular circle or group or community, or dedicating privately and powerfully, solo, one-on-one with their gods. Everything has in common these pivot moments in life that we choose. I am forever changed, however, by the fact that my experience of that in my 20s with my first circle was with the support and wisdom, encouragement and guidance, and often the stern face and the definite stance taken by those who nurtured and guided me. I remember their faces so powerfully to this very day, and I remember the gifts that each one of them brought me, oh, especially the priest and priestess that brought me in, but everyone else that was so much a part of being there only when I stepped up to the responsibility of myself, being present to myself and holding self-love and acknowledge my own power. It wasn't an easy thing because I was a young woman. I was still maturing emotionally, and there was an expectation that what would be released out of that had to do with community was any, I don't want to call them misbehaviors, but let's say behaviors that are disconnective, that were chaotic. Anger or frustration or jealousy or fear or pettiness, gossip. It was assumed on the other side of that there was a certain wisdom that came out of that baptism by fire that presented me whole and adult to the community I had chosen to be one with. I don't know how many times in my life I've revisited that when I have found myself reverting to a less than gracious, a less than wise, a reactive, emotional situation. I've always been quite aware that that initiation, that first one, influenced me as a woman, as a human. Definitely as a mentor as time went by, whenever opportunity would present itself. Life-changing and life-altering, and not an opportunity I would have had outside of exactly as it happened. Oh, there are other ways to get to that place. I got there. Surrounded by and embraced by, that first time, loved ones. Completely supported. I still feel that to this very day. I also feel responsibility to that, to this very day. Opening up, vulnerability, the willing to love, and equally the willingness to let ourselves be loved and appreciate it when someone else has made themselves vulnerable in some way to us. Trust. And the understanding, small moments and huge moments. Initiation is that point of the blade. The moment we decide what comes next, who we will be into the next turning of our lives. I wanted to capture how it felt that first time. I really can't. I cannot. I remember it here and I remember it here. But what I felt I could share is the impact it has had on the length of my life. That first experience of initiation. And then all the moments, the length of my life, I found myself back at that same place. Knowing, guess what? You're back at the place. You decide once again what you leave behind, what you take forward, who you will be, and who you will be in relation to all you love. That captures some of what initiation has meant to me. I wish you all mirth and reverence. Merry part.